This is going to be a video over some burls. I have quite a few containers of burls, a bunch of knife scales, pen blanks, bunch of stuff, and then I'll be discussing just random stuff in the wood. I've been in the wood business for 10 years, so uh, for the past 10 years, I've been selling wood or cutting wood. It all started whenever I took logs to another sawmill and got them processed. I did that for 3 to 4 years. In 2017, I purchased my first sawmill. I had to wait to get it. Finally got it, and then I haven't looked back. The sawmill replaced my other business, so I love remodeling houses, and I still like remodel my own house and stuff like that. But like, I used to like remodel hundreds of people's houses as far as like tile or kitchens, painting, you name it in the house, add-ons, knocking down walls, pouring new stem walls and foundations, new ductwork, electrical, everything. So at that time, I decided to go, full on with the wood. I decided to stop doing home improvement and repair, and I started doing, nothing but wood. So instead of selling wood a little bit on the side and remodeling houses, bathrooms, kitchens, and stuff like that, I made the leap of faith and chose to buy my first sawmill. The first sawmill was a LT40 wide gasoline engine. It was a perfect machine. I loved the machine. I spent $28,000 for the machine. It was a great machine. The LT40 is an absolutely fantastic machine if you want to get a sawmill. Um, my sawmill can cut 32.5 inches wide. I see on the specs on the new sawmills they cut 34.5. So if you buy a new sawmill, you can cut 34.5, and I can only cut 32.5. So that's a little unfortunate that they did increase the throw capacity on the newer sawmills, but I'm able to cut pretty big logs because sometimes if a log is too big, I'll cut one side down and I'll have book match slabs and I'll be able to process that slab and make it work. So it's a pretty fantastic machine. So yeah, the first sawmill was an LT40 wide and it had a regular gasoline engine, and it had like 500 hours on it, and it cut thousands of logs. I've cut for 235 people in the state of Oklahoma, and I have dozens of references. So if you have any logs in the state of Oklahoma, I would love to come to your property and cut your logs. If you need references, like I said, I have dozens of references, and I love what I do. Like, this is all I do. I've been working for myself for 15 years, so like, I would say 15 years ago, like, I used to do heating and air for 5 years. So at one point in time, 5 years into heating and air, and 2 or 3 years prior to that, I was still remodeling houses and kind of doing my thing and kind of hustling on the side and making money outside of my side job, my main job. And I decided to just like focus on working for myself. I stopped doing heating and air, and all I did was remodel houses for like 10 years straight. And during that time, halfway through that time, I found logs. And then I took the logs to the sawmill, got them processed, and at one point in time, I decided to get my own sawmill, and that's when the LT40 wide came into play with the gasoline engine, and then I finally sold it in 2020. People were freaking out. People were restricted. And anyways, I sold it for more than I paid for it. And then I purchased this sawmill. This sawmill cost me $41,000 in 2020. And now, if I wanted to purchase this sawmill, it cost me $60,000. Let me tell you about the great thing about this situation right now. I have like 3 different tripods. I have my favorite tripod with me right now, and I have you hooked up to a battery bank right now. I use the EcoFlow. I have 4 EcoFlows. I have satellite. So like whenever I go into the woods, I go into the woods for like days on end. So I'll have coolers packed. I'll have a bunch of water, a bunch of meat, I'll have a grill, sawmill. Sometimes I'll have multiple logistic trips, and I'll have sawmill and trailer on location. And I'm cutting logs, I'm slicing them up, and then I gotta put them in my trailer and bring them back home and stack them up and put them where they go. So every 15 minutes that light will go off. So if you see me going there, it's because my light go off. And if that light goes off, eventually this light will go off and it'll just be completely black. So you kind of have to move around in this unit if you expect to have full lighting. So if you see me kind of walk into the front of the unit, it's because of that. It's unfortunate, but that's kind of my ramble about the business. Yeah, so LT40 wide, sold it in 2020. The reason I sold it was because it was gasoline, and I kept on seeing things about gasoline engines going out around 1,000 hours. So that machine had 500 hours on it. I sold it for more than I paid for it, and it potentially the engine could have went out within 500 hours. So it made sense to me to sell it for more than I paid for it. I bought this one for 41. It cost me 60 to replace right now after taxes, and it just made sense to me because now I have the diesel engine. So the diesel engine for the past 5 years has been absolutely phenomenal. Whenever you have logs that are 32 inches wide and you expect to pull through them and not have any bog down on your engine, I highly recommend the diesel engine. Now, depending upon what type of logs you're going to cut, like whenever I cut walnut logs, I'm going to use the 10-degree blade. The only blade that I use is going to be Jerry's Resharp Ripper 37's 10-degree. I will say, over 1,000 hours on the mill, and there's probably, I would say, over 10,000 logs cut. There's times that we're all cut 50 logs in a day. Yeah, so 235 customers cut in the state of Oklahoma. I would love to cut your logs. This is going to be a long length video because I am going to go through these containers, and it's a bunch of burls. So yeah, I love what I do. Self-employed, wife's absolutely phenomenal. I have 2 kids. There's another kid kind of cooking in the oven right now, so that's unexpected. I'm extremely thankful. Thank you, Jesus, for that situation. But that is gonna happen. So kind of going through the baby phase again. It's gonna be kind of crazy. But yeah, I'm very excited about the future. 2024, I lost my father. So like, my dad was like, you're always able to call your dad. You can call your dad and be like, hey, what's up, dad? Blah, 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 blah. I can't do that anymore. So whenever, I was in Illinois, everybody was out of town, he hit a tree, okay? And he was there for a little bit of time, okay? And then, eventually I thought he was gonna go to ICU. And then I got the phone call, missed the phone call, called back, they told me he died. It was a tragic event. It completely altered my life. I think about him every single day. And he was like the #1 supporter of my life. So like, whenever I lost my dad, it was just like, oh man, I wish I could talk to him one more time. The last time I spoke to my father, I remember, so he came to my house because I had a dog. I recently just put my dog down like 8 months ago. Right after my dad died, I had to put Ella down. So my dad came to my house to check on my dog and my mom's dog. And yeah, so he came to my house and he just, checking things out and, knowing, what to do whenever I'm gone because I'm in Illinois and my brother lives in Costa Rica. My sister lives in Washington State. And he came over and he, he just, wanted to make sure everything was, situated. He knew what to do. And anyways, he left and he walked out the door. And I promise to God, I don't know why I did this, but I ran back out to his car. Okay? I ran back out to his car when he was closing his door and I said, I love you. Thank you so much. And he left. Anyways, we were in Chicago. At the Chicago, look, the light just turned off. I gotta move around. We were at the Chicago Cardinals game or whatever, and anyways, we FaceTime him, and anyways, I was in Chicago, he died, and it's been a crazy situation, 2024, but 2025 has been absolutely phenomenal. I have 4 different people that I have to go cut logs for. I have hundreds of different trees I have to cut, so I go into the woods, I stay into the woods like a few days at a time. I cut mini trees, I slice a bunch of trees up, and then I kind of bring those trees down, back, sliced up. I typically debark the trees depending on the time of the year, and then like right now I think I have like 600 slabs like in my hands. So I have 600 different pieces of walnut. Sometimes I have like 13 or 14 pieces of wood that are 40 inches wide. 4 or 5 different pieces that are 16 feet long, 34 to 40 inches wide, and then I have 8 different pieces of wood that are 20 feet long by 18 inches wide, 20 inches wide. I have also 18 footers, 16 footers, 14 footers, 12 footers, 9 footers, 8 footers, and 7 footers. I have like a ton of wood at my house, so I continue to cut wood. After I cut the wood, I stack it and manage it properly, sticker it, strap it, bundle it, and kind of forget about it. And then obviously I have dry inventory. This piece of wood, this row, I've sold some wood recently, but this piece of wood has been cut for over 2 years. It used to be in a stack for over 1.5 years, and now it's kind of standing up. And it's debarked. This particular piece of wood is $160. It has a book match, so another piece of wood that looks exactly like it. And so if you wanted to, do something with that, that'd be great. If you desire to buy one of these pieces of wood from me, know that if you want to split one of my book matches up, you're for sure gonna pay the $160. But if you want to buy like the pair, I'll make you a fantastic deal. So that's kind of enough about my rambling. I used to have a different sawmill, sold it for more than I paid for it, bought this one for $41,000, and now it costs $60,000 to replace. I also have a Lucas mill. I bought it in 2020. The reason I bought my Lucas mill is because I probably spent over $10,000 paying other people to cut my logs. So let's say you have a big old piece of wood. It's like a ginormous piece of wood. I have been cutting wood for over a decade, and I will say, outside of the procurement of the slab wood, I've been cutting wood probably for 18 years because I remember when my father bought these. We used to have land for over a decade. Okay, we sold it around 9 years ago. It was Hydro, Oklahoma. Okay, so there was a bunch of cedar out there. I cut the cedar down, took it to Sawmill. And that's kind of where my love for wood and wood grain came from. So it was a fantastic situation. I've learned a lot from this process. I absolutely love what I do. I don't imagine a world where I don't have a wood miser where I can like slice and salvage logs up whenever I desire. This machine doesn't work by itself. It requires lots of work. So if you desire to buy a wood miser, I highly recommend you to buy one, but just know that I would recommend you not having to finance the machine. I would recommend you having to, like purchase it in cash. Because if you finance this machine and you desire to make this your living, know that there might be months at a time where you might not be able to make the desired amount of money to provide for your way of life. So if you have that pressure because you finance the machine, it might be hard for you. So I don't know if I would recommend financing a Wood-Mizer in hopes to make a way of life. Now, if you have a solid and constant connection of logs and customers, and you're in saw log territory, I think that it's a great opportunity for you to buy a Wood-Mizer and try to create a business and just like, you know, be the person in your area that if you have logs or if you need logs cut, you're the person that they go to. So I think it's a fantastic idea, but I wouldn't recommend financing a machine because sometimes your plan might not go as you're expecting. So if you're financing a machine and you have that pressure on you because you didn't have the money to purchase the machine, then you might not want to buy it. Now, instead of buying a $60,000 Wood-Mizer, I would recommend to get the LT15 wide, and it's probably around a $10,000 price point. So you spend $10,000 on an LT15 wide, and you can start, cutting logs for yourself. You didn't have to finance it. You were able to purchase the machine, and you start cutting your logs for yourself. You have a tractor, you have a skid steer, and you can cut a bunch of logs if you have that complementary equipment to help you support the machine to cut those logs. So you don't feel like you have to purchase the best of the best machines. Now, I will say one day, I will have an LT70, Wood-Mizer, and it will complement this machine. And when that happens is because I won't be in this situation. I'm a micro sawmill, so most sawmills aren't stored in a storage unit and they're not accessible. Like this sawmill couldn't access logs right now. You couldn't come in here and bring logs to me and I cut them. So like, that's not my business model. My business model is to bring my sawmill to you. Instead of you having to deal with your logs and putting them on a trailer and bringing them to a sawmill, I'm gonna bring my sawmill to you. I'm gonna cut 100 logs, 60 logs, 40 logs, 200 logs, however many logs that you have, I'm gonna cut them, okay? After I cut them, everything is gonna be there. I'm gonna take my sawmill to the car wash like I do every single time. I spend $5, maybe $10, get it nice and clean, get all the bugs off of it. If you have a bunch of logs that have been on the ground for a while, there's for sure gonna be bugs in your sawmill. In your logs. So I don't want those bugs just to be chilling on my sawmill, getting into my dry, bug-free inventory. There's not a bug in this wood. There's no bugs in this wood. So whenever I cut random people's logs, I have to clean my sawmill because it's kind of you have to do that. I can't let this sawmill come in here with bug infested logs, and there's certain bugs in here, and let's say if they were to encroach on any of my pieces of wood, that would be a bad situation. I don't let that happen. So you have to be very careful whenever you store wood. Whenever you store wood, there's times where I'll cut wood for people and they won't manage it properly, and that wood will have powder post beetles. So let's say you have stacks of wood and there's a bunch of stickers in there, and then in between your stacks you have piles of sawdust. Well, you have powder post beetles, and that is you have little tiny holes in your wood from a bug that's eating your wood, and that's not like something I would like to buy. So whenever I manage my slabs properly, my ground is completely treated. My slabs are also treated, If the slabs have bark on them, they're going to be treated. There's not going to be any bugs in my wood. The wood does take 1 inch per year, so there's times I sit on slabs for years on end. There's a couple big old slabs in the front I've sat on for 5 years. They're priced at like $700 to $1,000. I would love to sell them to you, but kind of that's the ramble for the wood business. Let's open some containers. I can't really sit down with this. I don't know why I put it up on me, but yeah, I'm really strapped. So this is a red elm burl. I was gonna sit on this. I made this cutting board like 7 years ago. Just a random cutting board. Put this down. What's in this container? Look. So this piece of wood, you see it has the grill marks on it. I'm an honest person. I love the Lord, and I like to be 100% honest. So at one point in time, I have a few of these, and they're in another area of my yard. But yeah, so this particular piece of wood was infected with powdered post, okay? And the only way to eliminate that is to get this piece of wood to 160 degrees. And that's not just surface temperature, that's inside the wood. So as you can see, I have grill marks on this crotch piece of walnut because it had powder post beetles on it. I had the confidence to put it in with, my private stock, most desired, highly figured Burls. I zapped them, I zapped them. I need to come in here and finish this piece of wood. It's, a completely crotch piece of wood, walnut, just absolutely beautiful. I knew and I had the indications of what was going on with the slab. And I burn lots of walnut, I will say that. I also, I have, 600 or 700 slabs just stacked up. So, I have lots of options, but I knew what was going on with this. So I knew I needed to fry them. And I knew I just wanted this. Everything else of the slab, I burned. It's gone. It's up in the air. So, because space is very important to me. So when I have access to over 10,000 acres in the state of Oklahoma. I manage forests for people. So I come in and look at those forests. So if you have healthy 12, 14, 16 inch wide walnut trees, the tops are very healthy, they're not degraded, those trees are gonna stay. And then we're gonna start targeting the 24, 30, 40, 32, 26, whatever inch wide diameter it is, okay? You're gonna have tops, they're gonna start to degrade, there's gonna be signs of the tree, even just the soil, certain cogs, certain things that are gonna tell me that I need to harvest this tree because this tree is gonna turn yellow. I've cut over 10,000 trees in my life. I will say I've cut probably 4,000 or 5,000 cedar trees, and I will say I've cut thousands of walnut trees. Sometimes they're red elm trees. I felled this tree on 23rd Street in 2021. I saw an old man with one leg, and he was picking up a bunch of sticks. I've seen this tree for the past 7 or 8 years, and it was a burly clustered tree. It was a burly clustered tree. There's just a bunch of stubby branches on it, and I knew it was burly. And I saw him out there, picking up the tree, and I couldn't resist pulling in. Like I said, I've been working for myself for 15 years. I'm always I consider myself an entrepreneur, so I always like to, I like to approach opportunities. So if I can just pull into this person's property, talk to him, and see if I can get the tree, and say, hey, can I help you with a few of these branches? He had one leg, okay? So I helped him with a few of the branches. Hey, let me cut this tree down for free. I'm gonna fall it, I'm gonna dissect it, I'm gonna put everything at the curb. The city's going to remove every branch because we had a major ice storm. So anytime you have a major ice storm in a particular situation, I'm gonna walk to the front because this light's gonna go off. anytime you have an ice storm in a city, that city is willing to pay for the removal of, the stuff. So if you put a bunch of tree branches on the curb, they're going to remove it. So, I knew that, this isn't the first rodeo. So, I told Guy, I wanted to fall this tree. So I fell this tree on 23rd Street in Oklahoma City. We closed down one lane. I did want it to go a little bit, left. I knew with all the weight that was, kind of leaning toward the street, I wasn't going to be able to make that happen. So, I fell on 23rd. I chopped it up, I would say in 45 seconds, cars could go through. Anyway, so, chop, put everything on the curb, and then, I had this huge Y. It was all burley clustered. I sell wood every single day. That's all I do. So, all that stuff sold. But this is personal collection. So, Red Elm Burl, I wish I had some oils. This is just raw wood. It's fire. There's skulls. There's all sorts of different firewood in it. Pecan cluster burl. Somebody dropped this piece of wood off of me. People reach out to me. I just recently cut a log at my house because somebody got ghosted. They came to town with a log on the back of their pickup, okay? And they were expecting to sell it to somebody, and that person never answered multiple times. And kind of hey, I'm coming to town to sell a piece of wood to you, a log to you, yeah, that's cool, I'll pay this, blah, blah, blah. And then when you get to town, they're not answering, kind of ghosting you. It's miscommunication is unfortunate because I deal with it a lot. That doesn't happen on my end because communication is key. I have over 5,000 wood buyers on the phone that I'm looking at right now. So whenever you call me, I like to get your first and last name, and you're gonna have a WB behind your first and last name, and you're also gonna have the year that we came in contact because there's times people call me from 2017. I haven't talked to for 8 years, and I say, hey, what's up, Larry? He's like, what's up, Zach? How do you know my name? It's I remember everybody's name. So if you come in contact with me, I save your number, and I'm never gonna lose your number because you're important to me. You're an asset to me because I want to try to. How can I help you? I help thousands of people in the state of Oklahoma. How can I help you? There's times where people will be traveling from Tennessee to, Austin, and they're coming through the state, and they want to come visit me. Hey, they're not getting here until 11. They want to meet me here at 11 o'clock at night. Well, guess what? I'll meet you at 11 o'clock at night. It's happened a few times. Half of my wood goes to Texas very soon. Half my wood, I'd say a fifth, maybe a quarter of it right now in Colorado. Yeah, the other half is going to go to Colorado. I would like to, I have guys that sell a lot of wood for me. So I would like to I like to try to support those businesses. There's times my guys down south, or my buddy up north, they come up, I front them material. They come up, let's say they spend a few $1,000s. Well, how much more do you want to take with you? Okay, 4, 5, 6, 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, I'm down. So you build these relationships through time, and you just try to how can you help this person, assuming they're a legitimate person, how can you help this person increase their business and that's what I'm about. Ideally customers come in here and they pay 100% for the items. If you want to come in here and spend $1,000 and that's fantastic. If you want to come here and spend $100, $20, $40, whatever it is, that's fantastic. So anyway, so I get customers in here all the time, and what's crazy is it's happened 4 times. My buddy Roy, like I said, there's 5,000 different customers in the phone that I'm looking at. my buddy Roy, he reached out to me like 2 days ago. He's like, hey Zach, are you still in the wood business? People always question, like, hey, are you still cutting wood? Are you still selling wood? You know, all the time. I'm like, yeah, man, that's what I do. Hey, how's it going? I love your knife. Like, every time I cut a steak in the woods, I'm using your knife, Roy. I love your knife. I have 2 of his knives. There's a little lid right here, tricking me. Absolutely love his knives. So, like, I love the relationships I've formed over the years with customers. I absolutely love my customers. They're absolutely fantastic. You know, I buy wood all the time. I buy logs all the time. Like, you know, if you have land in the state of Oklahoma, I come to people's, I don't know if you just jumped on or whatnot. I've got for over 235 people in the state of Oklahoma with my sawmill. I bring my sawmill to your property. I charge you $150 an hour plus a setup fee. Your setup fee is going to be based off your location. So if you're, 1 hour away, 2 hours away, 3 hours away, depending upon your location, is going to be depending upon the setup fee. After my sawmill is ready to go, blades on, $150 an hour, I start slicing up logs. There's times I pull up to properties and there's 200 logs waiting for me. Well, that's not just a one-day event. The most amount of logs I've cut with my sawmill in a day is like 65, maybe 67. I think I could have cut more in that particular day. The sun wasn't down, but that's kind of that. It all depends on if I'm going to cut logs for you, let me cut the logs and you take the slabs off the mill. If I have to cut the logs and touch every piece of wood that comes on and off of the mill, we're not cutting 65 logs in a day. So the best operation is there's probably 3 of them around the state, and I've cut for them multiple times, and they have multiple people assisting this machine. I come onto your property, charge you $150 an hour. There's a person with a skid steer always feeding me logs. There's also somebody that's the sticker manager. They're stickering the material after it comes off the machine, okay? And there's also somebody, 3 different people assisting me with this machine if you want to keep up with me. I will say 50 to set, I would say over 100 different times I cut logs and customer can't keep up. There's been 3 different times where I have scheduled 2 different cuttings in a row because customer has dozens of logs. And let's say we cut a dozen logs in that day, because it's just me and customer, older person, older person, 50, 60, 65 years old, has a tractor, beautiful property, and we cut all day long. We have dozens of slabs, 40, 50 slabs, and they tell me, hey, can we reschedule and do it in like a week? I was wanting to do it the very next day, which was completely fine with me. I was able to do that. But they're so exhausted and they're so overwhelmed with the material, and they don't have enough stickers, to do their thing. They want to kind of push it back in a few weeks. Yeah, hey man, that's cool. That's completely fine. Let's do it in a few weeks. So that's happened a few times also. So I absolutely love what I do. I love cutting wood. Buddy gave this to me, Ed. He's in Tennessee now. He moved like 3 years ago. Stabilized. This has been stabilized in cactus juice, and it's been dyed. I have a bunch of walnut blanks, sycamore blanks. This is quartz on. We've sold quartz on 7 years. Dyed sycamore, greenish. Bowl, bunch of little pendants right here. Fire walnut. I have blocks. Look, I'm not kidding you. They're just stacks and stacks. Just book match. Like, this is fire. Like this is like very desired grain to me. Might not be to you, but I have some pretty good. Just some of these aren't set up 100% book match, but I have a lot of them labeled, as you can see. So that's kind of that. And there's a couple, there's 3 or 4 more bowls in here. Let's put a couple of these back so I'm not overwhelmed. Just blocks. you know, like I like to turn, so I have a lathe. Well, I guess I'll show you in a second. Here's one. I like to make like, you know, like round. I like to make square pieces of wood round, like really, you know, like I sand them, polish them, and stuff like that. It's like pretty cool. Like you know, like I have probably that container's not here, but I have like 200 or 300 just like handles. So like I have a bunch of like chainsaw sharpeners. So like I have 3 or 4 chainsaws. There's one right here. There's a couple back there. You know, there's 660 ones. You know, big chainsaws, 34-inch bar. But I like to make the handle for the file to sharpen them, and I have lots of them. But yeah, anyway, so like you know, just a bunch of fire grains in here. Let's see what's in this next situation. Let's put this back. I'm gonna need to have this out. I'm gonna put this back. I don't want to put it back out of the video. So like, even like just like right now, like, you know, just like offcuts. Like this is Tasmanian blackwood. I got this like 7 or 8 years ago. Somebody saw that I had this like fire hollow burl, big chunk of burl. Okay, you know I post them. You know there's like 50,000 plus Instagrams followers and stuff. So anyway, so somebody saw this like big chunk of burl and they really wanted it. So like I shaded this big oak hollow burl. They paid for freight both ways. And they gave me like a big old Tasmanian blackwood. I have the other piece, big old piece over there. Big old Tasmanian blackwood piece, a bunch of cherry pieces, a bunch of walnut burls and stuff like that in trade for that. And they paid for all the freight, and it was completely fine. But yeah, just Tasmanian blackwood. I have quite a few handles like that. My chop saw was dull, and that's why there's burn marks on it. But I made my son like kind of like a few baseball bats and stuff. There's a few at the house, but I kind of like doing that. Ideally, it would be cool to like have like a bigger lathe where I could like really turn some wood. And then I like making like knives and stuff. Like all this needs is I need to take this to a sander, and this would be a perfect knife. I'd take this knife right here, and this would be a tool that I would use to clean out all the sawdust in this particular machine. This needs to be a little slender than it is right now, and I would accomplish all those goals. I wish I could show you a few of the knives that I have in my tool bag. My tool bag's not here, but yeah, that's kind of what I do. I have a bunch of wood. I love wood. People would make like a hybrid block with this. They would maybe sandblast this bark, make a hybrid block. I like this is kind of a cool. Like a little bowling pin. I don't know why I turned it, but I wanted to turn it, and that's what I did. I don't have an auger for my turner, so I can't really clamp on to certain pieces and really make the things that I want. It's a Harbor Freight lathe, like $200. I actually have like a clamp that to make sure it stays together because there's a few things wrong with it. Kind of jerry rigged. So kind of do whatever you gotta do to make it work. So yeah, I gotta go into the woods and cut some walnut, and I gotta cut some box elder. Let me come to the front of this unit so light doesn't turn off. Because if this light just turned on and this light was to turn off, that light would be on for the next 15 minutes. So yeah, the lights turn off every 15 minutes. And yeah, man, I wish I could, there's just so many pieces of wood in here. Like, this is ebony. This is like, this is bloodwood. Like just I would say I have probably over 10,000 random pieces of wood. And that's not basing it off these containers or even, those things. Just random pieces of wood. Like just wood. I love wood. Let's see. At one point in time, there was a sawmill called Oklahoma City Sawmill, and that's kind of where my business started. I took trees from my father's property. My dad's dead, but anyways, took trees there. to Oklahoma City Sawmill, and they sliced them up. But they had this log that was covered under the blue tarp, and they kept on telling me, "Oh, that's rotten. That's firewood." Okay. I was like, "Well, that's firewood. You don't like that log? Can I have the log? How much do you want for that log?" I'd sell it to you for $130. So I bought it for $130. Okay. And I promise you, so like we put it in the sawmill, we sliced it up. There's probably like 13 or 14 pieces. And whenever we started getting to the center of it, I noticed it was hollow. So I didn't want to go any farther. We flipped the log and we turned it, and it was getting hollow. I didn't want to go any farther. I left like you can see it way back in a picture, back in the day. I have it somewhere, beautiful burl. Just a thick burl, and it just like looked like an alien, just like a brain, just absolutely fantastic. This came off of it, but it just had a bunch of pieces of wood. That one piece of wood, I sold for like $1,300. And then each slice, like $100, $200. So like, whenever that guy told me that was firewood, and that kind of like that ignited a spark in me to like salvage wood. And ever since that, that was, man, that might have been 9 or 10 years ago. That might have been 9 or 10 years ago. But anyway, so like, people will, and I don't do it as much as I did, but people would, reach out to me, and they'd have these piles of logs, and they would typically pour diesel on them, and light them up, and burn the piles. And ideally, you wouldn't manage the logs in that way. Sometimes the logs can get cracked and certain things. If you have heavy equipment just pushing logs around, that's not the best use of the log. Ideally, you would call me out there first, and I would be able to harvest the tree. We'd be able to properly, put it on the ground so we don't have any, shake or, cracks in the log. There's many times people put face cuts in these trees, and they come in from the backside, and the tree starts to lean before it's severed. You put your face cut in there, and you go from the backside, and the tree starts to lean, and it's not completely cut. And you keep cutting, and then the tree falls down. You fell the tree. Okay, well, that's great. Anybody can fall the tree. And I'm not trying to boast or brag. I have cut, thousands of trees. But anytime I cut, my hardwood trees, it's going to consist of a face cut, and it's going to be a bore cut. I bore cut every single tree. So I'm going to bore cut. You got your face cut. I'm going to bore cut these trees. I form a hinge, a proper hinge. I'm going to sever the complete insides of the tree. I'm going to place a few wedges. I'm going to kind of like make my trigger in the backside, and I'm going to pop that situation. The tree's going to fall. The tree's not going to move at all until I tell it to fall, and then it's going to fall where I want it to fall. And that's because I am I am like being cautious of like what's going on with the tree. Sometimes like people just want to beat the tree on the ground, and they put the face cut in the backside. Well, whenever that tree moves a little bit, it creates cracks in that log. So like I don't want that in my log. So that's why I face cut, I plunge cut, bore cut, whatever you want to call it. I wasn't taught, just I bore cut these trees, and put my wedges in there, pop the to the trigger, and the tree falls. And you prevent all the cracks, and then you're able to process the log, and you don't have a bunch of cracks that it was induced by you in the logs. So that's kind of my ideal situation. I don't like to buy logs from people. I've done it hundreds of times. You give me an example. Lovely guy, I want to go to his property. I'm going to his property. That's a new situation. Another one of the many. Guy wants me to come to his property and harvest a bunch of trees. So anyway, guy called me like 7 days ago. He's like, hey, he got ghosted. And then he's like, man, I'm not really trying to buy any logs. I wasn't like prepared to like buy a log on a Saturday. Call me again. Man, I'm interested. Send me a picture. Blah blah blah. I don't have much money in my pocket. I'm talking about just in my pocket. Okay, like just cash. Okay, I have money. I'm not broke. But I don't like to spend, like, if it's not in my pocket, I don't want to spend it. Like, I don't have a credit card. I didn't finance a machine. We have a mortgage payment, but like, I don't like to like spend money I don't have. So like, he called me a third time. He's like, man, I don't want to drive back. He drove 2 hours to sell this log to somebody, close to me, and he didn't want to drive back to. He didn't want to drive back with the log. And I was like, man, I have $80. $80. It's a big log. It's a nice log. It did have a curve. And this picture he sent me looked like a really straight log. Like, not the best walnut log, but okay, cool. Bring it to me. So he brought it to my house. I live in a gated neighborhood. I was expecting him to come in with the trailer. He came with the log in the back of the truck. So once he did that, it completely caught me off guard because I had rollers and I was completely ready to, manually get a log off of a trailer. Anyway, so I pulled my truck, backed it up, I pulled the log into my street, because, just, you kind of do whatever you want whenever you have a house. So I did that, and then I can't hook my log into my property, and then I kind of cleaned up a mess, and he left. I paid him $80 for the log. It produced 9 slabs, 9 2-inch slabs. They're beautiful slabs. They're very curly. Absolutely great. I love doing that. I don't like when I have to do it at my house because it creates a mess, and I wasn't necessarily prepared for that log and slabs to be procured and stay at my house. But with him wanting to, let me buy it for $80, it was like a no-brainer. So that's kind of how I look at it. You just kind of had sometimes things happen. I have wrecking companies often say they're demolishing some land. Okay, so you have a bunch of land, and they're taking everything off of the land, and these trees are literally going to go to the landfill and never be seen again because they're just going to continue to more stuff on top of them. And these people reach out to me with these logs, and I'll salvage them. I'll salvage hundreds of them. But you can't salvage every log. So whenever you get a sawmill, if you think you're going to just salvage every log, it might take a toll on your body if you don't have complementary equipment to help you with this. Like, unfortunately, I will say it sucked because I literally do 100% of the things manually. I don't have a skid steer. You see mules of slabs. There's hundreds of slabs in my house, even 20-foot slabs, 20-footers, 16-footers, 16-footers, 12, 8, 9, all these different mules of slabs, and they were all placed there by me. It wasn't like a skid steer, just placing it. It's just lots of manual labor with what I do and how I approach the business. The reason I approached it like this because I wanted to keep a very low overhead. My overhead currently to this day is $351. So for $351, I'm able to bring a customer here anytime I want. I sell wood. I sell thousands of dollars worth of wood. I'm able to bring the customer here anytime I want. I'm able to store my machine undercover. It's protected. It's not getting rusted. It's not, the elements aren't affecting it. And that's the price I'm willing to pay. Even if that number went up, I would still pay it because, first of all, I write the expense off. So I don't care what the price is. I'm gonna write it off. So having this unit and having this overhead, like this is my overhead. This is space. One day, I've had a few people ask, Zach, how are you gonna grow your business? Well, I don't believe in going in major debt to grow my business. My business has been like kind of an organic growth. I didn't pay for the followers or Instagram subscribers or followers or whatever. I don't pay for people to like me and follow me. I just I put things out there, People, follow along. I appreciate you guys. And this is kind of what I do. I cut wood, I slice wood up, I sell wood, and I love what I do. This is like what pays my bills. My wife also has a business. We have 3 different businesses combined. I'm actually going to be launching a 4th business this year. Don't even want to go into that. But anyway, so that's kind of that. I love business. I love kind of just having multiple streams of income and just kind of doing what you say. So people reach out to me. If you just tuned in, I've got for over 235 people in the state of Oklahoma. People reach out to me and they're like, "Hey Zach, I want you to cut some wood." I'm like, well, I would love to cut your wood. What day you want to cut? Anytime I schedule an event like to cut your wood, like I like produce. Like I'm not like, "Hey, I can't come, I'm sick." I always do what I say I'm going to do, and the reason I do that is because like that's your word of like you have to like follow through with what you say. Like I've always been a firm believer, if I'm gonna tell somebody I'm gonna do something, I like to do it. So people reach out to me, I tell them I'm gonna cut their logs, and I make it happen, and they're happy, and they have a bunch of material. And typically they call me back to cut some more logs. So if you have any logs, I would love to cut your logs. It's been a pretty great day. So I took my wife to the Wheeler District. I don't know if you're familiar. I don't know where you're at, where you're watching from, but there's a district in Oklahoma City called the Wheeler District. They reached out to her. So she has this pink bicycle cart. We bought this cart. It was red. We took it to powder coat. They made it pink. We the graphic, paid for all these things. I kind of designed it, and she designed it, and we put foam in it, and it's kind of a bicycle cart. Health inspector, all the permits, they came to our house, that we got, everything, like, it's like legitimate, okay? I take her through these events, like, all the time, at least once a week. I'm taking her somewhere, and like, she has her goods. These goods are like, gluten-free, dye-free, no corn syrup and stuff like that. Like very healthy, like push pops and stuff like that, ice cream sandwiches. And like she goes to the events, and like there's times like she sells out like her entire cart. Like she sells out of her goods. And like it's extremely rewarding to watch my wife like create a business in front of my eyes, and like I'm helping her, obviously. I've helped her make the push pops and stuff. But like, it's extremely rewarding to like watch her like succeed and like do all these events, like make money, like doing what she desires. Because like she has another business also. She's a sign language interpreter, so like that's what she does. She's sign languages. Like so if somebody has a certain impairment, she helps that person out, and that's what she's been doing for 12 or 13 years. So super extremely exciting to see her grind at the Wheeler District tonight. She exceeded her goal. She wanted to make X amount of dollars. She exceeded that. It didn't cost us any money to go there. They were invited. I'm extremely thankful for the invite. I would love to go back anytime she desires, or they desire for us to come back. And there's just so many people that reaches out to her. Like she literally has like 20 different events that I have to take her to. So with her schedule, I also have to coordinate my procurement. So I have desires to go stay in the woods for 4 or 5 nights in a row. So that has to line up with her schedule, because I listen to my wife. Anything she needs, I'm going to be there. I'm going to make it happen, okay? So I love what I do. I love that, business, she can do a business, I can do my business, sell wood, cut wood, and yeah, man, thank you guys for subscribing. If this isn't the channel for you, you can unsubscribe, that's cool. And yeah, man, God bless you guys, enjoy yourself. What's up? Let's see. How much for eco flows? Oh, okay, yeah. Let's show you guys this. I can take you off this, since you're still on. I'll take you. Let's show you one more piece. You talk about the eco flow. Okay, we're rambling for a little bit more. So this is an oak burl, just random piece. It was sitting on the EcoFlow. I do have quite a few of these. So I have 4 of these bad boys. They're like $1,000. Okay, I have 4 of them. I actually might have 5. But yeah, so they're like $1,000, and you charge them, and you have, like battery. Like, I have my buddy that dissects trees for me. Like sometimes there's trees that need to be dissected before they fall. He also has he has gas and stuff like that, but he has a little electric chainsaw. This thing will charge an electric chainsaw over a dozen times before it goes dead. So I have 4 of them. They're not all with me, but I also have the satellite. Not the satellite, but the solar panel. I have 2 different solar panels, so I could literally be in the woods with these 2 different solar panels that go with this, and the solar panels will charge this, and I'll always have electricity anywhere I go because of this product, EcoFlow. It's a great machine. I saw at one point in time they reduced from $9.99 to like $5.99. There was like a sale going on. So I think that there's a lot of people that are hurting right now. I see it, I understand it, I feel the prices also. I'm very thankful where I'm at, but I sense that you could potentially get one of these for a potentially good price if you kind of do your research under the EcoFlow. They don't pay me any money. I'm just kind of telling you, my honest kind of talk. I would love for them to pay me money. So yeah, I got 4 of these EcoFlows, a couple solar panels to charge them and stuff like that. They're pretty cool. I will be in the woods one day with all of them, with the solar panels hooked up. Whenever I'm in the woods, I see more cows than I see people. So I don't. There's hundreds of times I go in the woods completely by myself, and there's dozens of times where I pay somebody to assist me. Whenever I pay somebody to assist me, it's because it's going to be a hazardous situation. If the tree is going to be hazardous and it's going to be a risk of my life doing it by myself, I desire to pay somebody. And then he's an expert. He travels the country to take care of hurricane damage, and he can dissect any tree anywhere. So I will pay that fee to kind of provide me safety, because I don't want to take anything on that I feel uncomfortable doing. So I have that person in place. I actually have a few different people in place if I did need that. And these people come in, and we dissect these trees, get these trees on the ground safely. If I need a crane to lift a log from a backyard to my trailer, I've done it before. I have a good buddy, his name's Ben, and so there's many things that go on with the procurement of logs from an urban setting to a forest setting. First priority in urban setting is protection of property, and protection of oneself should be number 1. No one needs to get hurt, but protection of property, cars, houses, and stuff like that. And then the protection of the stem value, or the cracks that are caused for whatever cuts you need to be made in the tree. That's not necessarily a priority over a house or a tree. So however you need to get the tree down properly and safely, you got to do that. It might cause a few cracks, but that's that. So that's in an urban setting. If it's in a different setting and there's no liabilities, then you're going to harvest that tree properly. There's not going to be any cracks that are formed in the log because it was improperly fallen. You're able to fall that tree, no cracks in the log. You're able to slice that tree up and get a bunch of slabs. That's what I love doing. Cut trees, buck them up, slice them up, and cut slabs, put them in stacks. I love seeing stacks of wood. God bless you guys. It's been a day, long day. Wheeler District, baby. Let's go. Jesus Christ is King.